Right, let's talk about Venezuela, shall we? This isn't going to be a laugh riot, so buckle up. You see those people? Those are Venezuelans, and they're not off on a delightful holiday. They're fleeing their own country. Now, you might be thinking, isn't Venezuela known for, like, beautiful beaches and other things? And you wouldn't be entirely wrong. Venezuela was once one of the richest countries in South America. We're talking oil money, folks, swimming pools filled with crude, the whole shebang. But as you can see from these images, things have changed. Today, Venezuela is facing one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world. Millions have fled, leaving behind their homes, their families, their lives. So what the hell happened? What could possibly force so many people to abandon everything they know? Well, hold on to your arepas because over the next few minutes, we're going to dive deep into the Venezuelan crisis. To understand what's happening in Venezuela today, we need to rewind the tape a bit. See, Venezuela wasn't always a cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones at economist conventions. Not too long ago they were sitting pretty, thanks to a certain something bubbling beneath their feet: oil. We're talking oodles and oodles of oil, the kind of reserves that make Saudi princes blush. And for a while, it was great. The Venezuelan economy boomed, people were living large, and the future looked brighter than a hummingbird's backside on a sunny day. But then, like a telenovela plot twist, things took a turn. And not the good kind, like finding out your long-lost twin is actually a charming billionaire. We're talking more like the your entire family gets kidnapped by a drug lord with a penchant for parrots kind of turn. Corruption seeped in like crude oil into a pristine rainforest. The government made some, let's say, questionable economic decisions, and the price of oil, their golden goose, took a nosedive. Suddenly, that bright future was looking dimmer than a disco after a power cut. Now you might think, okay, so their economy tanked. That sucks, but people flee their countries for all sorts of reasons. And you'd be right. But this wasn't just a run-of-the-mill recession. This was a full-blown economic meltdown, the kind that makes economists weep into their spreadsheets. We're talking hyperinflation so out of control that you'd need a wheelbarrow full of cash just to buy a loaf of bread. Seriously, you're better off using the bolivar, their currency, as wallpaper. It's gotten that bad. And if you thought that was the cherry on top of this disaster sundae, oh boy, are you in for a treat. Because on top of the economic apocalypse, Venezuela also decided to spice things up with a heaping helping of political instability. Protests, crackdowns, shortages of basic necessities, you name it, they've got it. It's like someone took all the worst things about a country and crammed them into one unfortunate nation-shaped piñata, and guess who gets to beat on it until it bursts? The Venezuelan people, that's who. Alright, so we've established that Venezuela is having a bit of a moment, but what does that actually look like for everyday Venezuelans? How much does it cost to survive in this economic hellscape? Well, hold on to your wallets, folks, because we're about to do some price comparisons that'll make your head spin. Let's start with the basics, shall we? A liter of milk? That'll be 2 of your hard-earned US dollars, please. A loaf of bread to soak up all that overpriced dairy? Another $1.50. And forget about that fancy avocado toast, because a kilo of meat will set you back a cool $10. Now let's talk housing. Finding an apartment in Caracas, the capital, will cost you somewhere between $200 and $300 a month. Not too bad, you might think, until you consider the average monthly salary, a paltry $50 to $100. You heard that right, folks. We're talking less than the cost of a decent night out in most developed countries. Imagine for a moment trying to stretch a $50 paycheck to cover rent, food, transportation, and maybe, just maybe, a single solitary cerveza at the end of a long, stressful month. Spoiler alert, it's about as fun as it sounds. And we haven't even touched on the hidden costs, the ones that don't show up on your bank statements but chip away at your sanity nonetheless. The constant fear of blackouts, the hours spent queuing for basic necessities, the gnawing uncertainty of whether you'll be able to feed your family tomorrow. This is the reality for millions of Venezuelans. They aren't living, they're surviving. Scraping by day after day, hoping against hope that things will somehow, miraculously, get better. And for many, the only way to cling to that hope is to leave everything they know and love behind. We've talked about the economic freefall, the hyperinflation making the Venezuelan bolivar about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. But what does that actually mean for people trying to live, or rather survive, in Venezuela? Imagine going to the grocery store and finding empty shelves where there used to be food. Imagine your once comfortable salary now unable to afford even basic necessities. This is the harsh reality for millions of Venezuelans. They are facing a heartbreaking dilemma: stay in their beloved country, a country many desperately want to rebuild, but face impossible odds, or leave everything they know behind in search of a future for themselves and their families. And it's not just about putting food on the table, it's about access to basic healthcare, education, and even safety. When you have to worry about your kids getting kidnapped walking to school, you know something is desperately wrong. This mass exodus from Venezuela is not just a statistic, it's a human tragedy. Over 7 million Venezuelans have already fled their country, and the number keeps rising. To put that into perspective, imagine the entire population of, say, Hong Kong just up and leaving because their home had become unlivable. That's the scale of the crisis we're talking about. These are doctors, teachers, engineers, and everyday people who have been forced to leave their lives behind, often with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the hope for a better tomorrow. And their journey is anything but easy. Many face dangerous journeys, often walking for weeks through treacherous terrain, just for a chance at a new life. For those who remain in Venezuela, life is a constant struggle. Imagine waking up every morning unsure if you'll have electricity, if there will be water to drink, or if you'll be able to find food for your family. This is the reality for millions of Venezuelans. Basic necessities, things we take for granted, like having a working toilet, being able to take a hot shower, or finding pain relief when you're sick, have become luxuries. Imagine standing in line for hours, not for the latest iPhone, but for a single bag of flour. Imagine your children going to school hungry because there's nothing to pack in their lunchboxes. This is the heartbreaking reality of daily life in Venezuela. And let's not forget about healthcare. Hospitals are struggling, short on basic supplies like bandages and antibiotics, let alone life-saving equipment. It's a dire situation, and it's only getting worse. Despite these hardships, the Venezuelan people have shown incredible resilience. They haven't given up hope. They continue to support each other, sharing what little they have and finding ways to persevere. Neighbors help neighbors. Communities come together to support those most in need. There's a sense of solidarity and shared struggle that is both inspiring and heartbreaking. They find creative ways to cope, bartering goods and services, growing their own food in makeshift gardens, and finding moments of joy in the darkest of times. But resilience can only take you so far. The situation in Venezuela is dire, and the international community must do more to help alleviate the suffering of its people. As if the economic and social collapse weren't enough, Venezuela is also grappling with one of the highest crime rates in the world. The breakdown of law and order has created a climate of fear and uncertainty. Imagine living in a place where you're constantly looking over your shoulder, afraid to walk alone at night, afraid to even let your children play outside. This is the reality for many Venezuelans. Armed robberies are rampant, kidnappings are a constant threat, and gang violence plagues many communities. It's a level of lawlessness that's hard to comprehend for those of us fortunate enough to live in safer countries. The police force, often underpaid and ill-equipped, struggles to maintain order. This leaves many Venezuelans feeling vulnerable and unprotected, trapped in a cycle of violence and fear. For many Venezuelans, the decision to leave isn't just about escaping poverty or seeking a better life, it's about survival. It's about protecting their families from the ever-present threat of violence. Imagine having to make the impossible choice between staying in your home country, where you face constant danger, or leaving everything you know behind for a chance at safety. Parents are forced to make agonizing decisions, weighing the risks of staying against the uncertainties of fleeing. They know that leaving means embarking on a dangerous and uncertain journey, but they're willing to risk it all for a chance at a safer future for their children. The Venezuelan exodus is a testament to the human cost of this crisis. It's a stark reminder that safety and security are not guaranteed, and that sometimes the most basic human need is simply to live without fear. So, we've established that life in Venezuela is, to put it mildly, a bit of a dumpster fire. But where are these desperate people going? Who's welcoming them with open arms or, at least a working visa? Well, it turns out fleeing your country isn't as simple as picking a spot on a map and shouting, "Adventure." Although, let's be honest, if you're fleeing Venezuela, adventure might sound pretty good right about now. The reality is, most Venezuelans don't have the luxury of being picky. They go where they can, often relying on the kindness of strangers, the generosity of neighboring countries, or, in some cases, a distant relative who promised to send for them once they saved up enough empanada money. Top destinations include Colombia and Peru because, well, geography. It's a hell of a lot easier to walk to Bogota than it is to swim to Spain. But we'll get to that. Now, fleeing to a neighboring country might sound like a dream compared to, say, living in a country where your life savings can't buy you a loaf of bread. And look, it often is comparatively better. But let's not pretend that these migrants are met with parades and confetti cannons. Life as a refugee is tough. Imagine arriving in a new country, often with just the clothes on your back and a faded picture of your Uncle Miguel who moved there in the 80s. You don't speak the language, you don't know the customs, and you're competing for jobs that frankly, no one else wants. And if you think xenophobia is uniquely American, hoo boy, do I have some news for you. So yeah, it's better than dodging hyperinflation and rolling blackouts, but it's still a far cry from the Venezuelan dream, whatever that may be. Spoiler alert, it probably involves arepas. Everyone loves arepas. Alright, so Venezuela is a bit of a mess, that much we know. But what does the future hold for this once prosperous nation? Will it rise from the ashes like a phoenix made of, I don't know, delicious chocolate because they do have great cacao beans? Or is it doomed to remain a cautionary tale? A stark reminder that even countries with more oil than a Texan barbecue competition can fall victim to their own hubris. Frankly, if I had the answer to that, I wouldn't be here talking to you fine folks. I'd be on a beach somewhere, sipping a mojito made with Venezuelan rum, which, fun fact, used to be pretty good before, well, The truth is, predicting the future is a mug's game, especially when it comes to geopolitics. Ask any economist worth their salt, and they'll give you enough caveats and disclaimers to make a lawyer blush. Now, some experts, the kind who wear tweed jackets with elbow patches and have opinions on the gold standard, will tell you that Venezuela is in for a long, hard slog. Years, maybe even decades of rebuilding, restructuring, and generally trying to unscrew the economic tire fire that's been raging for the better part of 2 decades. Others, the optimistic sorts who probably see the world through rose-colored arepa lenses, believe that Venezuela could bounce back, that the entrepreneurial spirit of its people, combined with its vast natural resources, could pave the way for a brighter future. The truth, as always, probably lies somewhere in between. Venezuela's future depends on a complex interplay of internal and external factors, from political reforms to foreign investment to the price of oil, which, let's be honest, is about as predictable as a caffeinated hummingbird in a wind tunnel. But one thing is certain, the Venezuelan people deserve better. They deserve a future where their biggest concern isn't whether the grocery store has bread today, but which bakery makes the best one. Well, there you have it. The Venezuelan crisis explained with as much nuance and depth as we could cram into a video that, let's be honest, you're probably watching on the toilet. If you found this even remotely enlightening, or if you just enjoy watching a Brit awkwardly pronounce Spanish words, do us a solid and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave us a comment below. We're particularly interested in hearing your thoughts on the Venezuelan situation. Have you ever been to Venezuela? Would you consider moving there? Do you have any family or friends who've been affected by the crisis? Let's have a conversation, shall we?